Hello, everyone. Enjoy these relaxing yet powerful stories of resilience and triumph. She thought she could have a black man removed from first class with just a few carefully chosen words, until he calmly reached into his pocket and flashed his FBI badge. Patricia Langford strolled through Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, her designer carry-on gliding smoothly behind her. She had taken this flight route countless times before, Dallas to Washington, D.C. First class, the only way she ever traveled. Everything about air travel felt predictable to her. The priority boarding, the complimentary champagne, the hushed conversations between professionals. She expected comfort and exclusivity. So when she approached her row and saw a black man in a crisp navy blue suit already seated beside her, her steps faltered. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe to RVM for more captivating tale. He had an air of quiet confidence, his laptop open, eyes scanning the screen as if he were reviewing something important. Patricia's lips pressed together. She set her designer tote down with a little too much force and took her seat, barely masking her displeasure. First class wasn't supposed to be like this. The man beside her, Daniel Stokes, barely acknowledged her. He was focused, typing effortlessly, absorbed in his work. The glow from his laptop reflected against his dark skin, highlighting the sharp angles of his face. He had the composure of someone who belonged here. Patricia, however, wasn't convinced. She inhaled sharply through her nose, shifting in her seat. Her purse accidentally nudged his armrest. No reaction. If you like this content, comment number 1 below to let us know. Or if you don't, feel free to comment number 0. Either way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories. She sat up straighter, glancing around as if expecting a flight attendant to notice this mistake. Then she took it a step further. She leaned slightly toward him, just enough to make her presence known. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carefully polite. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" Daniel didn't even look up. Yes, that was it. No elaboration, no explanation. She cleared her throat, glancing around again. This time she caught the eye of a flight attendant, Emily Jacobs, a young woman in her early 30s who had been assisting passengers a few rows ahead. Patricia lifted her hand slightly, signaling Emily over. Daniel sighed, subtle but noticeable. Emily approached with her usual professional smile. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" Patricia forced a small chuckle, shaking her head as if she found the situation amusing. "I think there's been a little mix-up. I believe this gentleman is in the wrong seat." Emily glanced at Daniel, who finally paused his typing and looked up. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes. Not surprise, not confusion. Something else. Emily pulled out the passenger manifest from her tablet, quickly scanning the seat assignments. "Actually, Mr. Stokes is in his correct seat," she said politely. "Your ticket says 2A, and he's in 2B. Patricia blinked, her fingers tightened around the edge of her armrest. "That's odd," she said, forcing a laugh. "Are you sure?" Well, I just assumed." Emily smiled, already sensing where this was going. "I'm sure, ma'am. Everything looks correct." Patricia's face twitched, her carefully controlled expression wavered for a fraction of a second, before she smoothed it over with a tight-lipped smile. "Well," she exhaled, "I suppose mistakes happen." She turned back toward the window, but she wasn't done. Not even close. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating stories on RVM. We have tons more content waiting just for you. Daniel, meanwhile, had already gone back to work. Emily hesitated for a second, sensing the tension, then gave Daniel a quick nod before stepping away. But Patricia was stewing. Her fingers tapped against her knee, her breath was shallow, eyes darting toward the flight crew, then back to Daniel. He wasn't explaining himself or offering any reassurances. He wasn't playing into the little game she had expected him to play. That made her angrier. She wasn't the kind of woman to let things slide. But Patricia isn't the type to suffer in silence. She decides to take action. Patricia sat stiffly, arms crossed over her chest, her mind racing. This wasn't right. She had flown first class for decades, and never, not once, had she been put in a situation like this. The man beside her wasn't doing anything wrong, but that didn't matter to her. He didn't belong. Her breath came faster, her irritation bubbling just beneath the surface. She couldn't just sit here and accept this. She pressed the call button. A soft chime sounded overhead, and Emily Jacobs reappeared a few moments later. Her smile was the same as before, professional and warm. "Mom, is there something I can help you with?" Patricia kept her voice low, her tone carefully measured. "I'd like to request a seat change." Emily blinked. "Oh, are you uncomfortable? Is there an issue with the seat itself?" Patricia hesitated for half a second. She couldn't just say what she was really thinking. Instead, she tilted her head toward Daniel, lowering her voice even further. I don't feel comfortable sitting here," she said, her words slow, deliberate. Emily's smile faltered. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mom. If there's a technical issue with the seat, I'd be happy to—" "No, it's not the seat," Patricia interrupted. She exhaled sharply. "I'd just prefer to sit elsewhere." Emily glanced at Daniel, who had paused his typing again, but hadn't said a word. He was listening, waiting. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, his jaw tight. "Let me check if there are any open seats," Emily said, tapping her tablet. "Just a moment." Patricia sat back, lips pressed into a firm line. Daniel didn't react. He didn't argue, didn't acknowledge her, didn't ask her why she was uncomfortable. That only infuriated her more. A few rows ahead, a man in a blazer turned his head slightly, pretending to check his phone, but clearly listening. Across the aisle, a woman nudged her husband. People were noticing. Emily's fingers moved quickly over the screen. "I'm afraid we're at full capacity today. Mom, there aren't any open first-class seats available." Patricia's stomach clenched. Emily smiled apologetically. "Would you like me to check in economy? There might be a seat available there." Patricia's face burned. Economy, as if she would ever. Her voice caught in her throat. "That's not going to work." Emily's smile didn't waver. "In that case, I hope you don't mind staying in your assigned seat." Patricia forced a thin-lipped smile. "I suppose I have no choice." Emily nodded. "Let me know if you need anything else." She walked away, but Patricia barely noticed. Her ears were ringing. Daniel, still silent, turned back to his laptop and resumed typing. That was it. That was his response. He was just going to pretend she didn't exist. Her fingers curled into fists. This wasn't over. She exhaled sharply and pressed the call button again. This time, Emily hesitated before coming back. "Mom?" Patricia sat up straighter. "I need to speak to someone in charge." Emily's face remained neutral. "I'm the lead flight attendant on this flight. Is there something I can clarify for you?" Patricia's voice sharpened. "I need to speak to the head crew member, or the pilot." A murmur spread through the cabin. Someone let out a quiet chuckle. Emily's expression remained professional, but her patience was clearly thinning. "Ma'am, the pilot is preparing for takeoff and won't be available, but I'm happy to assist you." Patricia pursed her lips, her jaw tightening. Daniel wasn't reacting. He wasn't nervous, wasn't shifting in discomfort. It was like he had done this dance before. She lowered her voice again. "I don't feel safe." That changed everything. Emily's smile dropped, her body stiffened. Daniel stopped typing. Across the aisle, a middle-aged man wearing a Bluetooth earpiece muttered, "Here we go again." Emily straightened up. "I'm sorry, Mom, but can you clarify what you mean?" Patricia folded her hands neatly in her lap, tilting her head slightly. "I just don't feel comfortable." She hesitated, just long enough to imply something without saying it outright. "I don't want to be difficult, but I think it would be best if someone else took this seat." Daniel closed his laptop. This time he looked her directly in the eye, and for the first time, Patricia felt a flicker of uncertainty. But Patricia isn't letting this go, and now she's getting louder. A hush settled over the cabin, the weight of Patricia's words hanging in the air. "I don't feel safe." The phrase carried power. It wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. It was carefully chosen, designed to trigger a response. Emily, still standing beside her, didn't move right away. Her posture stiffened, and her eyes darted toward Daniel, who had now fully closed his laptop, hands resting on top of it. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't frowning. He just stared at Patricia, studying her. Patricia didn't waver, not yet. Emily exhaled slowly. "Mom, she said carefully. Are you saying you feel threatened? Patricia tilted her head slightly, giving the smallest shrug. I'm not saying that. I just don't feel comfortable. That's all. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth scoffed and muttered. A young woman 3 rows back lifted her phone slightly, pretending to text, but clearly recording. A few other passengers whispered among themselves, heads turning in Patricia's direction. Patricia noticed. She could feel the shift. The tide was turning against her, but she wasn't about to back down. This is a simple request, she continued, feigning politeness. I'm just asking to be accommodated. If I'm uncomfortable, I should have the right to move seats, shouldn't I? Emily's jaw tightened. Ma'am, I already checked, and there are no open first-class seats available. Patricia pressed her lips together. And coach, Emily hesitated. There are 2 open seats in economy. Patricia straightened. Perfect. He can take one of them. A low ripple of murmurs spread through the cabin. Daniel inhaled deeply, his fingers drumming once on the surface of his laptop, before going still. He wasn't arguing, wasn't responding, but he also wasn't moving. Emily blinked, as if replaying Patricia's words in her mind to make sure she heard correctly. Ma'am, her voice was lower now, firmer. Just to clarify, you want me to move this passenger to economy because you don't want to sit next to him? Patricia nodded once, sitting straighter. Yes, Emily inhaled through her nose. That won't be happening. Patricia's eyes snapped up. Excuse me. Emily folded her hands in front of her, voice unwavering. Mr. Stokes has a first-class ticket, just like you. He is in his assigned seat. I cannot and will not ask him to move. Patricia's face flushed. She was losing control of the situation. Passengers were staring openly now, some whispering, some shaking their heads. The young woman with the phone was still recording. Patricia felt her stomach twist. This is ridiculous. I am simply asking for the same courtesy that would be extended to anyone else who feels uncomfortable. Emily didn't budge. You are asking me to remove a paying passenger from his assigned first-class seat and relocate him to economy for no valid reason. That is not an accommodation. That is discrimination. A sharp silence followed. Someone let out a low whistle. Daniel hadn't moved, hadn't said a word. He just watched Patricia, waiting. Patricia's pulse pounded in her ears. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Emily squared her shoulders. Ma'am, we are about to taxi. If you cannot remain seated and follow flight crew instructions, I will have to ask you to deplane. Patricia's stomach dropped. What? Emily's tone remained professional, but firm. You have 2 options. Stay in your seat quietly, or you can deplane. But Mr. Stokes is not moving. A few passengers clapped softly. Patricia felt humiliation rise in her chest. This wasn't how things were supposed to work. She wasn't supposed to be the one getting reprimanded. She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but before she could, Daniel reached into his pocket. He pulled out a leather case, flipped it open, and held it up. And just like that, everything changed. A gold FBI badge gleamed under the cabin lights. The air in the plane shifted. Patricia's entire body went rigid. Passengers gasped. A few even chuckled. The young woman recording. She zoomed in immediately. Daniel's voice was calm, even, unreadable. Ma'am, he said smoothly, tilting his head. Would you like to file an official complaint? I can take your statement right now. Patricia's breath hitched. She couldn't speak. Daniel didn't move, didn't blink. He just waited. And for the first time, Patricia felt truly trapped. But Patricia isn't just embarrassed. She's about to face real consequences. The silence in the cabin was thick, stretching uncomfortably between Patricia and Daniel. His FBI badge glinted under the overhead lights, the gold emblem mistakable. It was the kind of thing you couldn't unsee, the kind of revelation that shifts the entire room. Passengers who had been whispering moments ago were now staring openly, some smirking, others wide-eyed. Patricia's mouth went dry. Her brain scrambled for an explanation, an excuse, a way out. This wasn't supposed to happen. The man she had tried to have removed from the plane, the man she implied was a threat, was federal law enforcement. Her throat tightened. Daniel's expression hadn't changed. He wasn't smiling or gloating. He just sat there, badge in one hand, eyes locked onto hers, waiting. His voice was steady, level, unreadable. Would you like to file an official complaint? Ma'am, the words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Patricia's body felt frozen, heat creeping up her neck. She tried to speak, but all that came out was a faint, strangled Daniel tilted his head slightly. You said you felt uncomfortable. He continued, tone polite, but sharp. That's a serious allegation on a federal flight. If you believe I've done something inappropriate, I'd be happy to take your statement. Patricia's stomach dropped. She could feel it happening. The shift. Moments ago she had controlled the narrative. She had expected sympathy, expected someone, anyone to take her side. But now she was the one under scrutiny. A man 2 rows ahead let out a low chuckle. Oh, this is priceless, he muttered, shaking his head. The young woman recording zoomed in on Patricia's face. Emily, the flight attendant, stood nearby, arms crossed, her face carefully neutral, but there was something in her eyes, a silent understanding, a quiet expectation. She was waiting. Everyone was waiting. Patricia's breath came fast and shallow. She couldn't admit she had lied. She couldn't say she had made it all up just to get rid of him. But if she doubled down, if she pushed forward with her claim, she would be accusing a federal agent of being a danger on a flight, and that would come with consequences. Her hands trembled in her lap. Daniel hadn't looked away. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Patricia shook her head, barely a movement. No, she croaked, no complaint. Daniel nodded once, as if he had expected that. Slowly he closed his badge, tucked it back into his jacket, and reopened his laptop. Just like that, it was over, at least for him. For Patricia, the nightmare was just beginning. A few passengers murmured their approval. A couple even clapped softly. The businessman across the aisle smirked and went back to his newspaper. The young woman with the phone, she was already typing. Patricia could feel her heart pounding. She wanted to melt into her seat, to disappear, to go back in time and undo the last 10 minutes. But there was no undoing this. She had embarrassed herself publicly. She had been exposed, and worse, people had seen it, recorded. Her eyes darted around the cabin, searching for an ally, someone who might offer a sympathetic look. No one did. Even Emily, the one person who had been patient with her, had lost the warmth in her expression. Patricia swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, wanted to say something to regain control, but she knew, deep down, there was nothing left to say. The flight wasn't even off the ground yet, and somehow she had already lost. But Patricia isn't just embarrassed, she's about to face real consequence. Patricia sat rigidly in her seat, staring straight ahead. Her breathing was shallow, her face burning. This wasn't just embarrassment, this was humiliation. Daniel had already moved on. He had flipped his laptop open again, fingers tapping calmly on the keyboard. It was as if she didn't exist. The rest of the cabin, however, they hadn't forgotten. Across the aisle, the businessman with the Bluetooth smirked to himself. The woman recording had stopped typing, but her phone was still angled slightly upward, as if waiting for Patricia to react. Even the flight attendants, the ones who were supposed to be neutral, had a different air about them now. Emily, the lead flight attendant, stood nearby, watching. Patricia felt it all, the weight of the stares, the quiet judgment in the air. She had miscalculated, badly. Her fingers twitched in her lap, her heart hammering. This wasn't just some minor misunderstanding she could smooth over with a forced laugh and a dismissive wave. She had tried to have an FBI agent removed from his seat, on camera. The implications were settling in now, heavy in her chest. Her mouth was dry. Emily finally stepped closer, her tone still polite, but no longer soft. Ma'am, she said, keeping her voice low, I need to confirm that you're okay to remain on this flight without further disruption. Patricia stiffened. A handful of passengers glanced over, pretending not to eavesdrop, but absolutely listening. She wanted to snap, wanted to demand why she was the one being treated like the problem, when all she had done was express discomfort. But Daniel's badge had changed everything. She was trapped now. The power she thought she had, gone. She forced her lips into what she hoped was a calm expression. I'm fine. Emily's gaze lingered. Then slowly she nodded. I'm going to hold you to that. Then she turned and walked away. Patricia exhaled shakily, clenching her hands together in her lap. It was over. At least that's what she thought. A sharp chime broke the silence. She looked up just as the young woman with the phone smirked at her screen and tapped twice. Patricia's stomach clenched. She knew that look. She had seen it on her own grandchildren's faces when they shared something online, something meant to spread fast. Her fingers tightened around the armrest. She turned slightly, heart pounding, and stole a glance at the woman's screen. The video was already uploaded. Patricia felt like the air had been knocked from her lungs. The caption was simple: racist woman tries to remove black man from first class, then learns he's FBI. Patricia's hands went cold. The flight wasn't even in the air yet, and somehow she had already lost. And if it was already online, that meant there was no stopping what came next. She turned her head forward again, trying to steady her breathing, trying to convince herself that maybe it wouldn't be so bad, maybe no one would care, maybe it wouldn't spread, maybe. Her phone vibrated in her purse, once, twice, a third time. Patricia's chest tightened. She didn't want to look, she didn't want to know, but her hands moved on their own, digging into her bag, fingers wrapping around the device. She pulled it out, and her stomach dropped. Text messages from acquaintances, from family, from people she hadn't heard from in months. Each one was a variation of the same question. Patricia, is this you? Just saw a video. Tell me this isn't real. Oh my God. What did you do? Her heartbeat roared in her ear. She swiped open her browser with trembling hands and tapped on Twitter. It took less than a second. Her name was already trending. The video had been uploaded less than 5 minutes ago, and yet, it had already been viewed over 20,000 times, and the comments, they were pouring in. Patricia's vision blurred as she read the first few. Karma is real. This lady really thought she could get away with it. Hope she enjoys the internet roasting she's about to get. Patricia's breath hitched. Her world wasn't just collapsing, it was burning. And for the first time, Patricia realized there was no coming back from this. But what happens after the flight lands is beyond Patricia's worst fears. Patricia gripped her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The cabin noise faded into the background, drowned out by the pounding of her own pulse. She could barely breathe. The video was still spreading, the view count ticking higher every time she refreshed. 30,000 views, 42,000, 61,000. It wasn't slowing down. She blinked rapidly, her mind scrambling for an escape, a way to stop this before it was too late. But it was too late. She swiped down, reading more comments. Imagine being this entitled. LMAO. She really thought she was gonna get away with it. The FBI part made my whole day. Instant karma. Expose her name. We need to know who she is. Her chest tightened. She glanced around the cabin, as if searching for a way to reverse time. But nobody was looking at her anymore. They didn't need to. They had seen enough. She shifted in her seat, her whole body rigid. Daniel, still beside her, hadn't moved. His fingers tapped lightly on his laptop keyboard. If he was aware of the video, he didn't show it. He didn't care. And that, somehow, made it worse. Patricia's phone buzzed again. She flinched, then looked down. Her sister. She hesitated, then pressed the decline button with a shaky finger. She wasn't ready for that conversation. She wasn't ready for any of this. The plane had barely even taken off, and yet her world was already collapsing around her. She exhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay calm. She needed a plan, a way to fix this. She could apologize. Maybe that would help. No, that would only fuel the fire. She could ignore it, pretend she hadn't seen the video. No, that was worse. Her mind raced, her thoughts colliding, spiraling. And then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our descent into Washington, D.C. The local time is 5. Please ensure your seatbelts are fastened as we prepare for landing. Patricia's heart dropped. Landing. She had been so focused on the chaos inside the plane that she had forgotten what was waiting for her outside of it. She refreshed the video one last time. 97,000 views. Her name was trending. Her hands shook as she stuffed her phone back into her bag, trying to convince herself that she could still get ahead of this, that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be as bad as she thought.
but Patricia still hopes the storm will pass until she turns on the news. Patricia practically bolted off the plane the second the doors opened. She ignored the side glances, the quiet chuckles, the unspoken judgment hanging in the air. She just needed to get out. But as she hurried into Reagan National Airport, her pulse skipped at what she saw waiting near baggage claim. A cluster of reporters, not a huge crowd, not yet, but enough. A woman in a navy blazer held a microphone near her lips, reading from her phone as a cameraman filmed her. The now viral video shows an unidentified woman attempting to have an FBI agent removed from first class, citing discomfort. The clip has gained over 1 million views in just a few hours. Patricia stopped breathing. 1 million? That was impossible. She turned her head quickly, praying they hadn't seen her, but one of the reporters locked eyes with her. The woman's face lit up. Wait, that's her. Patricia spun on her heel, panic spiking in her chest. She could not be seen like this. She moved fast, her heels clicking sharply against the tile floor. She needed to get to the exit, now. But her phone buzzed violently in her purse. Texts, missed calls, alerts. She couldn't outrun it. She shoved past a group of travelers, her breath short, her hands clammy. She barely made it to the curb before her name was shouted behind her. Miss Langford, do you have a response to the video? She winced. She hadn't even realized her name had been released yet. A taxi slowed near the curb, and she nearly threw herself into the back seat. Go, she snapped at the driver. Now, he raised an eyebrow but pulled away from the curb without a word. Patricia pressed her hands to her temples, eyes squeezed shut. 1 million views. Her stomach churned. She had built her whole life on careful reputation management, a good image, a respected name, and in a single afternoon, it was gone. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. She stared at it, heart hammering. Then just before it went to voicemail, she swiped to answer. Hello? A brief silence, then a clipped voice. Langford, this is James Rollins, chair of the Marston Foundation. I assume you're aware of the situation. Patricia's mouth went dry. She had been on the Marston Foundation board for years, a charity that prided itself on its progressive image, inclusivity and ethical leadership, and she already knew what this call was about. She swallowed. James, we're going to need you to step down, he interrupted. Immediately, Patricia stared blankly ahead. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Her pulse drummed in her ears. But this is being taken out of context. The board disagrees. His voice was flat. Final. We'll issue a public statement by morning. We expect your resignation by then. A sharp beep. He had hung up. Patricia lowered the phone slowly. Her career was over. Her reputation was gone. And the worst part, no one cared about her explanation. They had seen the video, and the video was enough. She let out a shaky breath. This wasn't something she could control. This was something she had done to herself, and now she had to live with it. Meanwhile, Daniel Stokes hadn't even spared her another thought. By now he was probably in a meeting, completely unbothered, his life untouched, because for him this had been just another Tuesday. If this story made you think, don't forget to subscribe for more gripping real-life scenarios.